what you're doing here is happening all over the country. As you know, I've done a good bit of traveling trying to help elect a new Senate and help put together a new Republican Party that keeps its promises, does what it says once it gets into office. I know you're frustrated like I've been, but for way too long, the Washington establishment, the political bosses, picked our candidates and told us who was going to represent us in our primaries. And then once they got to Washington, they just fell in the fold, split up the money, and all took home the bacon, and they sold our country down the drain. For years, all of us felt helpless that we really couldn't change things. Maybe here in South Carolina, where we're a little smarter than the other states, but all over the country, they seem to keep sending people who just spent money and borrowed money in order to get themselves reelected. But something started to change a few years ago. People decided enough was enough, that they weren't going to take it anymore. I decided to do what you're doing. Rock the boat a little bit. Change things. And you know what? My party wanted Arlen Specter to stay in the Senate, but there was a young man named Pat Toomey who I knew would stand for our principles, and I stood with him. And the people of Pennsylvania, the people here in South Carolina and all over the country got behind him through this Senate Conservatives Fund. Folks, this was just a website that I put up and said I'm only going to support true conservative candidates. And I put Pat Toomey on that website, and the dollars started coming in. The average contribution was $45. But before the end of this, we had raised him nearly $1 million. Down in Florida, our party decided they wanted Governor Charlie Crist as the next senator. We found out how loyal he is to our principles. He's speaking at the Democratic convention, for heaven's sakes. But there was a little-known young man that you may have seen lately named Marco Rubio. Marco understands the promise of America, and he can speak passionately about freedom and what it's meant to his family. But he had no chance of winning. The party wouldn't support him. But the people of Florida did. The people of South Carolina did. And before it was all over, they had raised him more than $1 million. And he won that race overwhelmingly and chased Charlie Crist out of the party. Now, Kentucky was a little even more rocking the boat because my own Republican leader was supporting someone else in his home state. But the people were looking at a young man named Rand Paul in Kentucky. Now, I was told Rand Paul couldn't win the primary, and if he did, he couldn't win the general. But the people decided differently, and he won overwhelmingly, and he's a real national leader already. Folks, we saw the same thing in Utah with Mike Lee. In Wisconsin, a Republican conservative couldn't possibly win, and Ron Johnson won, and he's a great new leader. What I'm trying to tell you is this country is in your hands, and we've demonstrated it all over the country. But folks, we've raised over $10 million already to the Senate Conservatives Fund, this time for those candidates. We invested more than $2 million in Texas to help Ted Cruz overcome incredible odds. But these aren't big donors. The average contribution is still $50 or less. People will send me $10 with a little email, and I'll send a little more after my next paycheck. If you're looking for ways that you can help around the country, you can go to senateconservatives.com, and no gift's too small, none's too large, but there are about 10 candidates on there that could make a difference in the Senate. I believe we've got a good chance to win the majority and remove Harry Reid from the majority. But this time, it's not going to be enough just to have a Republican majority. We're going to have a conservative majority, and we're going to keep our promises. You can be part of phone banks, calling for candidates all over the country. You can help change things.
Put her on the right track and give her back her song. The song of faith and freedom, the song of victory. The song our founding fathers sang when they fought to make us free. We are Americans, God gave us this great land. We are Americans, and here we take our stand. We will not be silent, and we will not be slack. We'll step up to the ballot box and take America back.
Everybody know what Rino means? Yeah, Republican in name only. Oh, it's election day. I've got to tell you how conservative I am, how I'm going to save money. I'm for national defense. I'm for blah, blah, blah. And then I get to Washington and I do something else entirely. Or I get to Columbia and I do something else entirely. And you know what? For a long time, they got away with it. Not so fast. Can't get away with it anymore because of Rhino Hunt and Harry Kibler.
Y'all ready to take back this country? Yeah! You ready to take back this country? Yeah! Are you ready to take back the state of South Carolina? All right, I want to talk to you a little bit about some things that Rhino Hunt has been involved in. You may have heard about all of these candidates, these challengers that got removed from the ballot. Anybody hear about that? All right. I want to tell you something, folks. That did not start on Wednesday, May the 2nd, with the first Supreme Court ruling in South Carolina. That day has become known as Bloody Wednesday. But it didn't start there. It didn't start with the second Supreme Court ruling on June the 5th, which those two rulings together took over 250 primary challengers off the ballot. That's Republican and Democrat. No, this story doesn't start there. The story of our lost primary election didn't even start in 2012. It started way back in the summer of 1990 and involved a group of corrupt South Carolina legislators who called themselves, and I kid you not, the Fat and Ugly Caucus. You see, that's back when dozens of lawmakers were indicted for selling their votes and for drugs and all sorts of things. It was known as Operation Lost Trust. It resulted in 27 convictions, 17 of which were legislators, and one was a judge. After that happened, rightfully so, South Carolinians lost trust in their legislature. Statements of economic interest became the sweeping new reform in South Carolina. And it was a good idea. We not only need those types of statements of economic interest, but we also need to know where every elected official gets their income from. We'll fast forward a little bit. In 2008, as was mentioned earlier, there was a lot of folks that lost their jobs as legislators in South Carolina. In 2010, there was a bill, H. 3066, that turned the Statement of Economic Interest into an incumbent protection program by creating conflicting requirements to file as a candidate. However, incumbents didn't have to follow this rule because they exempted themselves. 11 days after the first Supreme Court ruling, grassroots organizations across the state held press conferences in 5 separate counties throughout South Carolina to launch Operation Lost Vote. In approximately 8 weeks, volunteers from grassroots organizations all across the state collected more than 300,000 signatures of voters, and we placed 155 challengers' names back on the ballot. One challenger in particular, her name is Katrina Shealy. She is going up against one of the most corrupt legislators in the state of South Carolina, Senator Jake Knotts of Lexington County. I am happy to tell you that Katrina Shealy, as a petition candidate, has gained the endorsement of the South Carolina Republican Party. Just this week, folks, it's not over yet. This ballot fiasco is not over. And I have to tell you, it will not be over in November either. Buckle up, hold on. Just this past week, the longest self-serving state senator that we have, Senator Nikki Setzler, down around Aiken County, has filed a lawsuit against his Republican primary the Republican primary winner, to have her taken off the ballot. Her name is Dee Dee Waters. It's not over yet, but we're not finished yet either. Dee Dee Waters has an excellent chance to prevail against this liberal incumbent if the court does not intervene again. Most of us know about the National Republican Convention that was held just a few weeks ago. There was a whole bunch of talk at that convention about fair and honest elections. And a lot of good folks from South Carolina went to that convention, and they talked about how Obama wants to destroy our elections here in South Carolina. And just yesterday, the South Carolina Speaker of the House, Bobby Harrell, sent out an email, and I will quote, "This past month I had the privilege of defending South Carolina and our state citizens from the Obama administration's increased attacks on our state's rights to preserve the integrity of a free and fair electoral process for all of our citizens." Well, I appreciate that. Mr. Speaker, where were you when all of the challengers were removed from the ballot? Nobody came to their defense except the citizens. I'm sick and tired of these politicians telling us how great they are. Folks, we've got problems here in South Carolina. We were listed as the 5th most corrupt state in the nation. 250 challengers removed from the ballot, with more being sued to be forced off the ballot. 300,000 signatures collected in approximately 6 weeks. You want to take our country back? Yeah. If we want to take our country back, we better start by taking our state back. Let's start in November by casting our votes for challengers that have had to fight their way back through the corruption of our legislature. When you go to the ballot box in November, you should remember to cast your ballot for the individual and not a straight party ticket. If you vote a straight party ticket, you will not vote for a petition candidate, and you will put the corrupt legislators back in office. You should not vote for someone just because they are a petition candidate. Know who you're voting for. Y'all ever heard that saying about doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results? Voting straight party ticket means 4 more years of increased budgets in South Carolina. 4 more years of failing schools. 4 more years of the Budget and Control Board. 4 more years of increasing bonded debt for your children. 4 more years of a state-controlled economy. 4 more years of consolidation of power and secrecy of our government. Most and foremost, 4 more years of corruption that stole our election. Do you want 4 more years of corruption in South Carolina? Are we going to take our state back in South Carolina?
Yeah!
Visit the Operation Lost Vote and Rhino Hunt tables down to my right. Give us your contact name so we can help take our state back. We'll contact you and let you know what you can do to help us. Thank you all very much. I love you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it falls to me to have the final word, and I would just let it be this. I would reinforce the words that Senator DeMint said in his speech tonight. Make sure you go to the polls in November and make sure that you take someone else or multiple someone else's with you. These guys on the other side will stop at nothing to win. They will cheat. They will do everything they can to try and retain power. But there's an old saying in politics. It's hard to steal a landslide. You'll hear a lot of poll numbers between now and then. And guess what CBS, NBC, and all the rest of the liberal media will tell you? Oh, this is a close race. It's neck and neck. Obama's got a bounce out of his convention. Obama's going to get a bounce all right, but it's going to be in November. One of the things they attempt to do with the polling data is to de-incentivize you. They want to make sure that you're depressed. Oh, Obama's got it in the bag. Romney can't win. I may as well stay home. That's precisely what they want you to think, because they know what's out there. They see the same polling data internally that I see. And they know that this guy is in big trouble. And the only way he can win is if we don't show up on election day. Golfers have an old joke saying, they say, well, golf is, it's not life and death. It's much more important than that. Apparently our president believed that. But I can tell you what is a matter of literally life and death. The life of freedom and liberty in this country as opposed to the death from the socialist policies of this administration. Let's put an end to them in November. See you at the polls. God bless you.